I believe we're on the second paragraph on Kuf Ein He. V'odamu Rabbeinu Zichronim Levracha. Furthermore, it was said by our sages regarding Lashon Hara, Sheshkula Lashon Hara keneged avodah zarah, gilui aros, v'shfichus damim. Lashon Hara is equal to avodah zarah, idolatrous worship, gilui arayos, immorality, u'shfichus damim, bloodshed. So the other points out, v'davar zeh tamim me'od. Sheshkula Lashon Hara keneged ela averos, that slander, Lashon Hara, should compare to these three very heinous crimes. We're told in the Gemara in Sanhedrin that regarding these three transgressions, a person should give up his life and not transgress them. And Lashon Hara is equal to them?
All three together?
Hara, all three together. A person should rather give up his life and not transgress speaking Lashon Hara. It's a well-known halacha. These three cardinal transgressions, a person, a non-Jew says, or even if a Jew, somebody says to him, commit this act of sexual immorality or die. You're required to forfeit your life and not die. Serve an idol or die. Choose death. Kill this person or you die. One's required to submit his life. But there's an important qualification you forget. It's often not said. Serve the idol, you die, kill him first. Boom. If you can, of course, kill him. He's threatening to kill you if you don't do this transgression, so kill him. Kill him. Fast. Huh? Yeah. Quick draw McGraw. Shows you for threatening my life. It's an important principle you have to remember. Haba lagaha hashkem v'hago. He's a rodef. Kill him. That halakha is only said if you have no way out. You can't neutralize that person. There's no way of killing him, so you're required to submit your own to submit your own life and not transgress. But of course, you should first take his life. He's threatening you to kill you unless you do these things, so kill him first. And if you're going to die anyway, it would probably be better to go trying to take his life than to transgress. Yeah?
Take his life first.
That's a very important qualification, but it's pashut. It's pashut.
Not to a Jew.
It should be pashut to a Jew.
Common sense. But
Yeah.
People don't have common sense.
No.
They think,
You don't have to. I mean, it might be considered to be a kiddush Hashem to subject oneself to death rather than transgress. That's certainly true.
Yeah.
But if you're going to die anyway, then why not try and put him out in the process? He's going to die anyway. You're going to die. The person's going to die anyway. So at least die trying to kill him. Vromru. And further, they say that applies, of course, even if it's a Jew. A Jew says to him, "Do it or die," so kill him. No questions asked, on the spot, if you can. If you can't, still, I think it would be better to forfeit your life through the struggle than just to passively submit to death. So, in any case, the point here is that the author is questioning, how is it that something as Lashon Hara, even though it might be very serious, how can it be considered, equivalent to these three transgressions? Furthermore, the Sage said, Hamur avodah zarah, it's very stringent avodah zarah. Shekola moide ba kekoifer b'chol Torah kula. Anybody who admits to, submits to, is involved in Lashon Hara, that's as if he is negating the entire Torah. And furthermore, the Sage said, Mumar avodah zarah, mumar l'chol Torah kula. a person who serves idols, he is kind of abrogating the entire Torah. So I'm not sure if he means to say here that since Lashon Hara is like idolatry, so just as idolatry abrogates the entire Torah, so Lashon Hara does. But why would he have to say that? He already told us in the Gemara in Ullman that says that's what Avodah Zarah is. Excuse me, that's what Lashon Hara is. I'm just wondering if he means to say, I don't know, maybe there's a difference between being a mumar and being a kofer. Mumar Avodah Zarah means he's like trading his faith. That's mumar, lahamir. He's trading his faith from God to idolatry. So that's equivalent to kind of trading the entire Torah as well. But there's a difference between trading and negating. Kofer is to negate. So I'm just wondering whether by bringing the second teaching he intends to tell us, as bad as idolatry is, it's almost like trading the Torah. But Lashon Hara is spoken about as being kofer, negating the Torah, which might be even worse. Excuse me, and if that's what he means, then that would be even worse. What, being kofer?
No, mumma.
Mumma is less than kofer. I mean, it's hard. I'm only suggesting this. I don't know for sure because mumma is also used sometimes synonymously with a kofer. No, my point is just that I'm not entirely sure why the author is bringing the second teaching. Again, just to show you, if Avodah Zarah, if Lashon Hara is like Avodah Zarah, and Avodah Zarah is tantamount to negating the Torah, so that shows you that that's what Lashon Hara does. But the previous statement just said that. So why would the author be bringing the second one? It's not adding it. It doesn't seem to be adding anything. I'm suggesting perhaps the distinction would be between mumar and kofer. Let's go on. V'yesh li ten tam b'davar. He wants to explain why.
It could be a mumma for Avodah Zarah.
It says if you're moving to Avodah Zarah, you move to the Kol Torah Kula.
Pretty sharp statement. I mean, a mumma for Avodah Zarah, that I can understand. Then you're negating the whole Torah. But a mumma for Lashon Hara.
He says that. Somebody who speaks Lashon Hara is kofer on the entire Torah.
Many people are caught into that. I mean, don't do it all. But that's very
So the author's trying to, in the process of explaining why it's so bad, why that's the case.
So what are you saying? Because a mumma is like a kofer?
No, I was just trying to. I was just wondering why the author brought both of these teachings, where they seem to be saying the same thing. Just to suggest that one possible difference is I noticed the language regarding the Avodah Zarah is only a mumar, whereas the language regarding Lashon Hara is kofer. So maybe suggesting perhaps mumar is less stringent than kofer. Being a mumar is related to like changing. It's changing God for this idol. But kofer is to deny. Maybe there's a difference. Let's go on. V'yeshli ten tam b'davar. We can explain the matter as follows. Ki ba'al lashon shone bi'ivaltoi. Eser pamim v'yoseh b'chol yom machlim u'mevayesh b'nei adam. The person who speaks Lashon Hara is different in his transgression. Why? Because 10 times, 10 times and more every day, he embarrasses other people. Milvad ma shemazik demishomer alav. Above and beyond which the damage that he causes to the people he's speaking about. Va'afilo verakala. Kashadam oiver aleh kama pa'amim. And even if it's a light transgression, if a person transgresses it frequently, he nases gedola. It makes it big. A small thread and a small thread 1,000 times becomes a heavy rope. Kefilu se'ar achad shehurach v'cholesh me'od. One hair which is soft and weak. K'shtekabetz harbe se'aros yachad. When you make many of these hairs together, ta'aseh mehem hevel chazak. It becomes a strong rope. And that which the teaching says that Lashon Hara corresponds to these three serious transgressions, the perush, the explanation is talking about a situation where he transgresses one of these other transgressions, like on a one-time basis, because of his yetzer. V'lo keneged hameshumad hayotzi miklal lo'oiver alehem b'chol yes. So it's not. We're not comparing the person who speaks lashon hara to the person who entirely repudiates Judaism and is not practicing at all. It's talking about somebody who transgresses on a one-time basis. So that's one way of explaining the difference. Right? Why is, in our sources, lashon hara considered to be more serious than these other transgressions? Because lashon hara, because it seems to be less stringent, is something that a person does time and time and time and time again, where so many times, one after the other, compounds and becomes very, very serious. And that's worse than somebody who, God forbid, would do one of these other transgressions on a one-time basis. It's hard to see how, no matter how bad and how often he speaks lashon hara, it could ever be considered like a one-time murder. Because even if it's a one-time thing, murder is extremely serious. But that's what he's suggesting. If you're talking about, who are we to attribute relative severity to the transgressions? But somehow it seems that, yes, if a person does a one-time sexual immorality transgression because he's overcome by desire and can't control himself, as horrible as that is, it's a one-time thing. He can do tshuva over it and correct himself. And the same thing, perhaps, regarding idolatry. I don't know, in these terms, how, at least in my mind, you could keep consider murder in this situation. But in general, that's what he seems to be saying. So these teachings, which talk about the severity of lashon hara, it's talking about the lashon hara which is done repeatedly, so that it's compounded into something which is great, and therefore equivalent to doing any of these more very serious transgressions on a one-time basis. V'od, and furthermore, ba'al lashon hara kosher lo la'asos tshuva. One who has mastered the art of speaking lashon hara, it's hard for him to do tshuva. Kevan shuhu ragil b'kach v'limed l'shona daber ra. He's accustomed to it and has taught his tongue to speak evil. V'od, and furthermore, achet kal ve'enav, the transgression is light in his eyes. He says, lo yasisi rak dibur ba'alma, I only spoke, I didn't do anything to anybody. Ve'enu noisen lev l'shuv l'ruv l'ruv she'aseh, he doesn't take heart to how much harm he's really causing to a person. He ruins this one's job opportunity, and this one's shidduch, and this one's family situation, and
even in respect to the owners, you can kill someone. Owners is misa from Bezdin.
yeah.
The lashon hara.
Yeah.
I ruined his job. I ruined his life. But
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in terms of the actual punishment, it can't be as severe. No matter how much times, no matter how much he speaks lashon hara, in terms of the punishment, it will never be as severe as doing one of these things. But spiritually speaking, it's very bad in Hashem's eyes. But even if he does tshuva from the lashon hara, ein tshuvaso shalema, he can never do a proper tshuva. Why? Ki einu makir godel lechet asher, he doesn't appreciate the damage that he's done. He needs forgiveness from those who he spoke of. And he can't ever remember all of the people he spoke about. And there are people who he spoke about who, as a result of his having spoken, caused harm and damage to these people. And there's no way of knowing who they are. And even if he knows who he spoke about, he has no way of knowing all of the different forms of damage that came to this person because of his speech. V'shachach ma diber alav ki lashon hara mechusei v'makeh b'seizer.
He can't do tshuva.
He can't ever do proper tshuva.
But killing, you can do tshuva.
Yeah.
Can he bring back
Yeah.
life?
That you can't do. Can't bring back the life, but he can do tshuva over the act that was done.
Between Hashem and him, he can do tshuva.
I see what you're saying. In other words, if tshuva is rectifying the wrong, and in lashon hara he can never rectify that wrong for the reasons explaining, so how can you rectify, God forbid, murder? You can't bring the person back to life.
Right. That's the rectification to bring it back to life. Is that really the tikkun?
No, I mean if the tikkun is through the rectification, and you're right. I mean, you can't bring this person back to life. So according to the idea here, I guess you'd have to say the same thing regarding murder. I mean, you can't undo the idolatrous act. You can't undo the adulterous act. But Maybe the point is it's contained. I mean, the scenario here is contained. It's quantified. You know there was a murder. You can do tshuva about that murder, but you can't do tshuva about lashon hara because it's going off in all directions that you have no way of knowing where it goes. It's not quantified in any way. Yeah. And he can't even remember all of the people that he spoke about because by nature of lashon hara, he does it quietly. He does it kind of, in hiding, and therefore, it's not something which is publicized and that he might remember. And he's here, and he's harming somebody with his tongue very far away, and he has no way of knowing. And also, the one who has transgressed with lashon hara is generally embarrassed to go say, "Hey, I spoke to lashon hara about you." Sometimes he'll mention something about the family, besmirch the family, and it'll cause harm to this family for generations, to the siblings and the cousins and everybody else. He says something. Look, if it's true, there might be scenarios where it's permitted, of course. This is considered to be a Jewish family, but this person knows that someone in an earlier generation really wasn't Jewish, so that everybody thinks this family is Jewish, but the grandmother might not have been, and there was never any conversion, for example.
That's the truth.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So he said, "Look, what can you do? This family is not Jewish, and they're considered to be Jewish by other people, and they're marrying into this family, marrying non-Jews, and possibly having non-Jewish children. So you have to say,
right? You have to open up. Yeah.
So you must be talking about a situation where either what he's saying is not true, or it's true, but in a way which doesn't. But it's about something which doesn't have to be said.
Put in the papers.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know what the scenario would be, but it's something which, let's say, is true, but shouldn't really be a reason to prevent other people from marrying them. But his making it all public is embarrassing to the family and would also cause people to refrain from being involved with this family, even though it might be permitted. Something like that. There is no forgiveness for this. The sage just said of blessed memory, somebody who speaks about the pagama mishpacha, saying that they're not miyuchis, or that there's some has v'shalom, some mamzeros or something. Ein lo mechilo ilamis. He won't be forgiven forever. Why? Because this rumor that he spread about this family is going to go on for generation after generation, so he'll never have mechila. Well, furthermore, mishu rogil b'lashon hara pamim yidaber dvarim klape mala. A person who's used to letting his tongue loose might unleash it against God. Diksiv, as it says, shatu b'shamayim pihem. They directed towards heaven their mouths, uleshonam, and their tongues go on the earth. Yeah. So the point is, there's a juxtaposition here. Somebody who lets his tongue loose about things here in this world will ultimately direct his mouth towards God as well. He says there is no transgression which has a type of punishment of somebody who makes claims against God on high. The sage of blessed memory said in Erechin, Tesvav Amud Aleph, 10 trials were given to our ancestors, uvechulam lo nechtam gzar dinam, and all of them did not have a bad outcome, ela lashon hara, like the one regarding lashon hara. Shenemar, as it says, im lo ka'asher dibartem ba'oznai ken esei lochem. Yes, y'all have spoken about me against God in my eyes, so I'll have the last word. Ullman, it says, Vishma Hashem es kol divrem v'yiktzof v'yishovah. God heard your voice of complaint against him, and he became angry against you, and he swore that you shall be punished and not be brought into the land of Israel. Ve'ena Torah megina al bali lashon hara. Even though the Torah has a protective quality, the person who learns Torah is protected by his Torah learning. That will not apply for somebody who speaks lashon hara. You can have all of the Torah in the world, but if you start speaking lashon hara, it negates all of this Torah learning. Doeg ha'adoimi, Doeg, the Edomite, came she siper lashon hara, after having spoken lashon hara, lo omdo lo hachmasoi, v'lo hegenu lav torosoi. Uma she'omer Rabbeinu zichron levrocha, avera mechabo mitzvah. Yes, a person does an avera that actually extinguishes his mitzvahs. Vein avera mechaba Torah, but an avera cannot extinguish the Torah Torah learning that a person does. But Yetzirah, Shenemar says, Ki ner mitzvah v'Torah or. The mitzvah is like the candle. The candle can be extinguished. You do a good deed, that good deed can be extinguished by a bad deed. But Torah or, the Torah is light. You can't extinguish light. A candle you could put out. V'alover derech mikra amru, v'lo ala porek al hasaras avera. But still, I think the point is that lashon hara, he says, does undo a person's Torah. That's the only thing that can undo a person's Torah, lashon hara. Mitzvahs is one thing. Do a good deed, that unfortunately could be canceled by a bad deed. But the Torah, learning that a person has, won't be extinguished by the bad deeds. Only lashon hara. There's a famous story of Rabbi Meir in the Talmud. Not Rabbi Meir, I'm sorry. Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya. Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya, who came to be known as Acher, the other one. And the Gemara tells a story, unfortunately, how the great Rabbi Akiva made a spiritual journey into the spiritual realm with his Talmidim. Rabbi Akiva came out of that very intense spiritual experience unscathed. One died. He was just spiritually electrocuted. The other one became deranged, went out of his mind. He stayed alive, but he went out of his mind. It was such an intense experience. And the other one, he became a kofir, a heretic. What he saw in that spiritual realm was so intense that he couldn't reconcile reality with that, and he became a heretic. This is Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya. So at some point, he decided to have some fun, and he wanted to hire the services of a woman of ill repute. So when he approached her to hire her services, she said, wait a minute, aren't you Elisha ben Avuya? You're a rabbi. And the Gemara says that day was Shabbos. He pulled a turnip out of the ground. It was growing there, meaning he was mechalo Shabbos intentionally. And he said, Ani acher. I'm somebody else now. Mechalo Shabbos. To show that he's chas.
Yeah.
Wow. That's intense. But in any case, he had a Talmud that was Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Meir continued a relationship with his Rebbe, even though he became an Apikoros. And people said, how can you continue to learn from Elisha ben Avuya, who became Acher? And he said, he's like a pomegranate. I peel out the peel and throw it away, and I take out the fruit on the inside. He has a lot of Torah. Where it says how one time they were walking along the way, it was Shabbos, and Acher was riding on a mule. Shabbos is forbidden to do that, at least to Rabbanan. He was riding on the mule, and Rebbe Meir was walking behind him, and they were talking and learning. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
He was being Mahal Shabbos, and Rebbe Meir was listening to his Torah as he was being Mahal Shabbos. And they got to the edge of the town, the Tchum. You can't go any further than that. So Acher said to Rebbe Meir, he says, Chazor b'cha. Turn around, go back. You can't go any further than this. I'm going forward, of course. But you keep the Torah. You got to go back. It's past the Tchum. We're approaching the Tchum. So Rebbe Meir took the opportunity to turn the situation around. He said, Chazor b'cha. Right? Not meaning you should also return back and not pass the Tchum, but more specifically, Chazor b'cha, tshuva. Do tshuva. And Acher got the message. He understood. He says, Kvar shamati ma'achrei pargod, yesh tshuva l'kol chutz li'acher. I already heard behind the heavenly curtain that anybody can do tshuva aside from Acher. So it's too late for me. I'm a goners. And he went back and he went forward, and that was it. Gemara says that when Acher died,
True, that's what he heard.
Yeah.
Achim came. Anybody but Achim.
You see, even though he was a kofer and a balavera, he still heard that voice. He heard. You see, he merited hearing that voice. And he said, "I already heard."
But I heard it was wrong. He could turn that around.
I'll get there.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Gemara says when he died,
Right.
there was a bit of a problem. As far as his averes are concerned, Gehinnom.
Right.
Gehinnom.
Right.
Oh, he did good deeds? Yeah, but now he has all these bad deeds. Gehinnom. On the other hand, the Torah. He'll have his Torah. We can't send him to Gehinnom. Yeah. He's got all of that Torah. Right? So what do? So he was in limbo.
Yeah.
He was in limbo. He didn't go to Gehinnom. He didn't go to Gan Eden. He was in limbo. But I'm just bringing this whole story to show how you see the light of the Torah prevented him from going to Gehinnom, which he really should have done in order to start correcting himself. But the Torah actually prevented him from going through that tikkun, prevented him from going into Gehinnom. So he was in limbo. He didn't do anything. The Gemara says that Rebbe Meir said that when I die, I'm going to elevate him. I'm going to elevate him. So it's tikkun. And years later, Rebbe Meir died, and all of a sudden smoke started coming out of the grave of Acher. It's a sign that, fortunately, he was admitted to hell, to Gehinnom. So Rebbe Meir's Talmud, who was Rabbi Yochanan, the Talmud of Rebbe Meir, the spiritual grandson of Acher, because Acher was the Rebbe of Rebbe Meir, and Rebbe Meir was the Rebbe of Rebbe Yochanan. So Rebbe Yochanan was like the spiritual grandfather.
What about Kivu?
Who? Rebbe Yochanan, Bekitzer. So Rebbe Yochanan said, is that any way for a Talmud to treat his Rebbe? To send him to Gehinnom? When I die, I'm going to send him to Gan Eden. The Gemara says, after some time, In the years, when Yochanan's nifter, smoke stopped coming out of the grave of Rebbe Meir. He was able to male the neshama out of to Gan Eden. I mean, he's taking this, saying this kind of in a light fashion, but it's a very serious matter here. There's a whole discussion as to how it is that Rabbi Yochanan was able to affect the tikkun of Rebbe Meir of Acher when Rebbe Meir, his own Talmud, was not able to do so. I won't go into that right now. There's a whole discussion about that. Why was Rabbi Yochanan able to do what his Rebbe Meir, was not able to do for his Rebbe? That's a different discussion. In any case, I'm just bringing the story as an indication of what the type of thing that we're talking about here. Yeah. But Lashon Hara, that can harm a person's Torah. Our sage said of blessed memory. Oh, you raised the point I said I was going to get back to later. Yeah, one of the things was that how can you blame Acher? He heard a heavenly voice which said he's got no hope for tshuva. Yeah. On the other hand, we know, right? Our sources tell us, "Ein davar omed b'pnei tshuva." Nothing can stand in the way of tshuva. So one of the explanations is that, this bas kol was a true bas kol. It wasn't a false bas kol, but the bas kol was saying something which was untrue, namely that Acher had no hope. That was not true. That was a test that was placed before him. He, on his very high level, turned his back against Torah. So here, God was like turning his back on him to see whether he would do tshuva even if he doesn't have a kapara. And if he had done tshuva, even though he felt that it wouldn't help, then actually it would have helped. It actually would have helped. That was his trial. On his level, to have turned his back on Torah, in order to be accepted, he'd have to force his way back in tshuva, even after being told it wouldn't help. And if he had done it, even thinking that doing so wouldn't even help, that would have been a way of rectifying what he did wrong. So even Acher could have done tshuva. He was just told that he wouldn't help in order to give him the opportunity of rectifying himself, and he chose not to do that. I mean, God is the perfect judge, so God must have known that Acher really could have overcome that trial, and he didn't. But sometimes I think, we're in a position where, particularly with children, if they do something wrong, if it's something you take particularly serious, you might present kind of a wall between them because you want, as part of the punishment, and you want them to proactively take the steps to correct that by overcoming the wall. You have to be careful and not put too strong of a wall before them, because you can't expect a child to think as an adult, and they don't see the way out, and you can't expect them to think, well, even though my father is not showing me any slack, right? He really does want me to say I'm sorry anyway. Yeah. Sometimes you might give the children the impression what you've done is so serious that saying I'm sorry is not going to help. You have to be careful when you really do want the child to feel remorse. You're actually kind of preventing them from doing so. Yeah, too thick-lined. Yeah, so you have to be careful in these scenarios to be very firm, but also make it clear to the child that they have a way back. They have a way in. Yeah, they have a way in. They might have to work to get there. And that's part of what you want them to do, is to work to get there. But sometimes you have to make it clear to them that they do have that option. And they have as far as you're concerned, they have the power and the ability to do that. So they shouldn't lose hope and then leave the whole thing. I mean, one incident is not going to cause your child usually to go off the derech. But if you do this again and again, particularly as they get older, at some point, they're going to break. You have to be very careful about that. Okay. Let's just finish off this last paragraph. Omer Rabbi Seinu Zechon L'Bracha, the Sage instead of blessed memory, Knesset Israel, Ahuva Bekoila. They're loved through their voice. Shenemar, as it says, Tashmiyeni es kolech, ki kolech arev. Let me hear your voice, it says in Song of Songs, because your voice is beautified, like in prayer and so forth and so on. Usnua b'kola, but they're also hated through their voice. Shenemar, it says, Nosno alai kola, alken sonesiha. They put their voices against me, and therefore I hate them. So when they speak in prayer, God loves their voice, and when they speak out against God, it's despised by God. Emor miata. Mavis v'chaim b'yad lashon v'oavea yochal pirya. Life and death is in the hand of the tongue, and those who love it will eat the fruit. Perush meaning, oyev lashon, one who loves speech, odom echafetz laver tamid, who likes to talk all the time, eitza haguna nechoina etzlo sheyochal pirya. He should eat the fruit of that tongue. Meaning, Perush, shelo yidaber dvarim b'telim. Let him not speak nonsensical words. Rak yidaber b'divrei Torah v'hava shalom. Let him speak of Torah and words of peace. Meaning, if you love speech, and some people are more talkative than others, particularly those who are talkative, should harvest the fruit of the tongue, the desirable, sweet aspects of speech, Torah, and good words. Encourage other people through your power of speech to do good. To show them the good path and distance them from the bad. And use speech to acquire truth. There's no end to the mitzvahs a person can do with his tongue if he uses it properly. That's the meaning of the phrase which says, death and life is in the hands of the tongue. If you use your tongue for negative things like lashon hara, that turns a person towards death, destruction, darkness. But it can also bring chaim, life. That's Torah and mitzvahs and peace. That's all life. So all of that is in the power of the tongue. Okay, let's stop here. The next section is going to go into 6 different categories of lashon hara. Right? Kas mesapri lashon hara nechlekes l'shisha chalakim. And it's going to outline those 6.